Did Ghostwire Tokyo deserve all the hate? If you told me that Ghostwire Tokyo's actual title was Far Cry 15 Ghostbusters of Japan, I wouldn't be surprised at all. I played through Ghostwire Tokyo's entire story and almost all of the side quests in just over 25 hours, and here's what I think. Ghostwire Tokyo is a Japanese open-world, family connection love story, first-person, 2 protagonists in one body, paranormal action horror, collect-a-thon, 1 million map marker, your main character is the hero who's gotta save everybody, tedious, creative, out-of-the-box, too many mechanics that mean nothing, entertaining game, and I'd honestly recommend you give it a shot. It does have its flaws, and I'm gonna detail multiple things that I think could have been done better or just completely differently in the design of this game, as well as letting you know why it's worth a try. Ghostwire Tokyo opens up with our young protagonist Akito crashing his motorbike and basically dying, but not before the other protagonist, KK, a dead, battle-hardened, older paranormal detective, possesses Akito's body and forces him to do his dirty work. Yeah. A fog then quickly takes over the area, Thanos-style zapping everyone out of existence, the clothes they were in even fall to the floor. Akito is spared from this thanks to KK's possession, giving him special powers. Then you get attacked by the Slenderman. And you learn basic combat for the game and how to activate your detective mode where you can see items and enemies through walls. Yes, they are literally Slenderman, there's no other comparison to make here. Anyways, once you learn the combat and get acquainted with the fact that you aren't dead, Akito now wants to go check on his sister who's in a coma at the hospital, and KK wants to defeat the evil Hanya, who is the reason for the fog and people disappearing and stuff. Turns out, Hanya kidnaps Mari, Akito's sister, in order to open the gates of Satan's house. In this review of Ghostwire Tokyo, I will be touching on the history of the game and its developers, the world building, the gameplay, all the crazy mechanics and systems this game has created, and some of my most memorable moments throughout my playthrough. I played through the game start to finish in about 25 hours on normal difficulty, making sure to complete all available side quests except for the photo placement side quest, which I will explain a bit later in the video. Ghostwire Tokyo was developed by Tango Gameworks, a Tokyo, Japan headquartered studio, who at the time of release were mostly known for Evil Within 1 and 2, which are very Resident Evil 4 type games. It seems like everyone was kind of hoping for and expecting a Resident Evil 4 type title, and instead we got this out-of-the-box Japanese paranormal action thriller. There are definitely some scary or creepy moments, but this game is much more oriented towards action than creepy or dread-inducing gameplay. Tango Gameworks' next game after Ghostwire Tokyo ended up being Hi-Fi Rush, which is also not Resident Evil or Evil Within at all, so they definitely enjoyed their jaunt into other types of games. It must also set a whole different vibe to the headquarters when you're working on a smaller happy game as opposed to this huge creepy game. I just want to take a second to remind you to like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. I'm really excited to put out my next video and I hope you'll all take some time to watch it. Please let me know in the comments what you're currently playing, as I'm always looking for inspiration for my next video. The game is set in Shibuya, a real-life Japanese location approximately a 15-minute drive from the Tango Gameworks headquarters, and from what I understand, it's actually a very faithful recreation of the area from a rather small team. Ghostwire Tokyo released on March 25th, 2022 to very middling scores on only the PlayStation 5 and PC. Some reviewers enjoyed the different path Tango tried out, and some reviewers thought the game was very cookie-cutter and tedious. There was also some chatter about bugs and other such things that could have been ironed out with a little more time in the oven. About a year later, the game came to Xbox after the exclusivity agreement with PlayStation ended, and it made the jump with a huge free content update entitled The Spider's Thread, and it has remained on Game Pass ever since. I started the game with this DLC installed, and from what I've read, it has made a dramatic improvement on many aspects of the game. So consider this review of the full game start to finish with this DLC installed. I don't know what the game was like at launch. As I said earlier, I played through the whole game start to finish and did every side quest in about 25 hours on an Xbox Series X with the game's performance mode exclusively so I can get 60 frames per second. After looking up some videos of the game running with ray tracing on, I ended up turning on quality mode, which is 30 frames per second, but it enables ray tracing. I did that to find the last of the Tanukis and play an extra half hour or so just before writing the video. It was worth it, and just seeing the reflections of light on the ground made me realize I should have cared more about ray tracing than frames from the start. I also realized a little bit late that I should have looked up what was the best graphics mode to play on, as there are a bunch of different options. The world building of Ghostwire Tokyo is very detailed, and a lot of thought and heart went into this game. It's a weird game and it leans into it. You're going around vacuuming up spirits into your katashiro, which are pieces of paper, fighting the Slenderman with magic colors that shoot out of your fingers, all the while talking to spirits who wait around pretty close to where they died, hoping you'll help them move on. And there's still the main quest to be done as well. The game takes place in a beautiful ray-traced recreation of Tokyo's Shibuya district. And because of that fog, there are no other living humans around. The city still manages to feel lived in as there's heaps of clothes everywhere. These are what remains when someone was taken out by the fog, and those who still had business left to take care of remain as spirits. Even though you'll find spirits on almost every roof, which kind of implies that there were hundreds of people on the rooftops at the time of the fog destruction, so I don't know if they thought that one the whole way through. It's actually funny because you hear them talk sometimes before you vacuum them up, and it's often just like a little remark about where you are depending on the districts or whatever. But the roof ones, they kind of just talk about stars, or they actually just assume that they're dead. And like, I get it, it's a video game, they wanted to make a reason to go up to the roofs. It just made me like laugh. While running around the city, there are enemies pretty much on every second or third street you go down. You can choose to run away or fight every encounter. The leveling system works on experience points, which you can get through vacuuming spirits and returning them via payphone, completing side quests, and of course completing main quests. I'll delve into the combat and leveling system later, but for now let's continue on with the world building. Side quests are actually a big part of it. Most are pretty similar, unfortunately, but there are basically two templates for the side quests. The first one is that you walk up to a spirit who hasn't yet been able to move on, and they will explain to you why they think that is. Some is guilt. A man separately sold 2 reportedly cursed masks that were said to bring grief upon all if they were kept apart, and some are really just unfinished business, like the man that was using a public washroom when the fog came through and he needs to finish his business, so you find him multiple rolls of toilet paper and all is well. The second template for side quest is this item or area is cursed, please kill the enemies around it to make it uncursed. The first template lends itself to some really cool and interesting stories that the game tells, but you gotta kind of push through the battle arena quests to get to the cool ones. I'd recommend playing through the side quests in Ghostwire Tokyo, as I felt that they added a lot to what would be kind of a quick game, and they do really build an entire world around this beat the bad guy and save everyone main quest. Another open world mechanic the game took on is Torii gates. These are your classic open world activate this thing and the map fog will remove itself, but it's actually even more needed in this game as it removes the real impenetrable fog that actively hurts you if you get too close. Once you've fought the enemies around the Torii gate, the surrounding map area will be open to you, as will new map icons. Some of them are kind of whatever, like finding graffiti, which actually was not even properly highlighted when I played through the easier to run performance mode, but was extremely noticeable and highlighted in quality mode where everything's prettier. Also, I had no vibration in my controller at all until I turned on quality mode as opposed to being on performance mode. I don't know, kind of weird, but it's been like a year and a half since this thing came out, so... Another thing I kind of enjoyed, but I know not everyone will, was that the way you get more bullets or uses out of your spells is you have to find a map icon and use it. I know I shouldn't like it, but it was like a good way of basically holding back the amount of ammo you have at any time. It does get a little bit annoying always finding map icons, but it is what it is. There's also the photo side quest that I mentioned earlier, where you receive a photo and you have to recreate the shot in the open world. I didn't do this at all, partly because I didn't know the city well enough, and basically it didn't really interest me either. On the other hand, they did have a couple of funny side quests. One is the Tanuki side quest. You're introduced to the Tanukis and the boss of them kind of wants them all to be together again. But they are separated across the city and they can shapeshift. Well, except for their tail that seems to poke out of whatever object they decide to shapeshift into. These were fun to find and I did find a good amount on my own, but I did have to resort to a guide to finish the last of them off so I could finish the side quest. There's also a full clothing and inventory section where you can change into various outfits. There's some cool ones and there's some silly ones like this Vault Dweller one from Fallout 4. In the same menu is where the prayer beads hide, which are honestly kind of the key to actual combat progression and more powerful feeling throughout the game. The prayer beads are essentially power-ups. For example, your water attacks can do 40% more damage, or you get like a bigger health percentage healed when you eat food, or even if you activate detective mode. Did I mention earlier KK just calls this use my power and doesn't really give it a name? But anyways, a prayer bead could be like activate detective mode and it'll guide you to the nearest ghost to vacuum up. You can only use one of these at the start, but you can upgrade your character via skill points, which I'll get into later, to use 3 different prayer beads at a time. The inventory section basically consists of a bunch of different Japanese snacks you can eat to regain health points, and if you eat the special snacks from the other worldly plane, you'll also gain a power at the same time as health. There are so many meaningless different little systems in this game. It's like the developers just really seem to enjoy adding weird little mechanics here and there, because like at some points it just feels like they just asked anyone who had an idea what they wanted to do and they just threw it in and forced it to work. For example, there's like this sigil unlock mechanic that happens at every Torii gate, and when you're freeing someone from a specter or need to remove the evil out of it or something like that, basically you click into it and the game draws out a pattern you have to recreate with your analog stick, or mouse on PC I assume. Then after tracing it, you hit a combination of buttons and KK will remove the evil from the thing. It's just a waste of 30 seconds, which would be fine if there was like only one, but you end up doing so many of these throughout the game, it just gets ridiculous at some point. There's even a thing for people like me where you can just hold a button and not have to attempt to recreate the pattern. And honestly, like, thank God because of this. It's tracing the patterns just honestly feels inaccurate. Sometimes I swear I did it right and it would just fail me. And of course, there's no consequence. You can just try again, so feel free to waste your time until you get it. Finally, you can indeed pet the dogs. You can even give them food and they'll potentially lure out a yokai, but before that you have to fight off a bunch of enemies, of course. Once that's completed, the yokai will give you a magatama, which can then be used to unlock new powers, or sometimes after you give the dog food, it'll go dig up some money for you. There are also cats all around, but you can only read their thoughts and not pet them at all, to the dismay of all the cat lovers out there. But they do get to play the role of merchants at all the stores and stalls, in the absence of the humans, while the dogs just sit around and bark, so maybe a win for the cat people. Now, on to the actual gameplay. Ghostwire Tokyo feels slow until you've played and leveled up enough. The aiming, the leveling up, the collecting of things, breaking sigils. Thank God you could skip dialogue before it was said during conversations, because everything at the start of this game is just extremely slow. You're basically forced to waste skill points on speeding things up so it doesn't feel like you're just waiting around for the game to play. What are skill points? Basically, every level up you earn about 10 or so skill points, and most skills can cost 10 or so skill points to unlock, but some can go as high as 45, with every denomination of 5 under that getting their own skills. This is also where those magatamas come into play, as sometimes even if you have enough skill points, you'll also need a certain number of magatama to unlock the next skill tree path as well. There's also another way to gain skill points, and these are through finding a collectible, KK's investigation journals. Basically books that are placed randomly in the open world, and collecting them will give you skill points. So you're just left spending skill points that simply make you kill the enemies faster by literally speeding up certain actions by 1.5 times once you've paid your skill points. You're not getting better at the game, you're not getting stronger, you're just gaining more health and more time that was arbitrarily taken from you given back to you. There is definitely some strategy in when to use the core stealing move and when to just shoot a couple more bullets at the enemy to end them, but it just felt underwhelming. You have this beautiful, colorful fighting system, but the dodge kind of sucks, and of course it's slow. The aiming feels a little bit like off or sluggish. The auto aim constantly aims at the wrong enemy or at the only enemy in the group with an actual shield in front of them. The different elements on your projectiles mean nothing, and the only way to get more ammo is to find more statues in the world. I think the game should have given you some specific skills as you hit level milestones instead of leaving it to the player to manage themselves, as most players logically will find the vacuum ghost quicker power or break core's quicker power to be immediately needed and spend their points right away on those, and they might not even notice that they should have actually saved up their points for a couple levels and then buy themselves one of the real good powers like a glide or a grapple to almost any point in the game, or even better ways to dispatch of enemies like the knockdown skill or the entire stealth lineup. Another not really well explained concept is that collectible that I was telling you guys about, where the KK investigations need to be found in the map. They actually give you more skill points than a regular level up, and the only way to find them, other than just stumbling upon them through regular gameplay, is to open up the right Torii gate to get the right prayer beads that will let you use your detective mode power to point you to a KK investigation journal that's less than 50 meters away. Then again, you'll also want to use your prayer beads to power up your weapons. And remember that one prayer bead takes up one slot and only powers up one element of one weapon. So you better hope it's the gun you like the most. You can, of course, spend some of those hard-earned or found skill points on being able to wear more than one prayer bead at a time, so that's another early upgrade you have to know to get. Once you're high-powered, the guns do feel stronger, the battles are much quicker and actually fun, but it's kind of grating to get to that point and not feel like you missed like a really good upgrade early on until you put in the time and effort the game requires of you. Now, let's delve into the actual combat. So you have 3 spells, or guns if we're being honest: water, wind, and fire. But these elements mean nothing to the entire game. There's no weakness towards or from enemies, so they're literally just colored bullets. There's a machine gun or pistol, green, wind element, a shotgun, blue, water element, and a grenade launcher / RPG, red, fire element. None of these elements mean a single thing. There's no weaknesses from different enemies towards a certain element or anything like that. Now, in combat, you can kill an enemy two ways. One is normal FPS fare, hit them with bullets until they run out of health points. But the second way is that after getting a hit a number of times, they'll reveal their core, and you can essentially pull it out from a distance with this slow extended rope pulling maneuver that leaves you open for damage while you're doing it. And you can't aim or move while you're in it. But don't worry, you can use your skill points to make it faster, because normally leveling up doesn't actually seem to increase the amount of damage you're doing to enemies. The only way to do that is to collect the prayer beads from the specific Torii gates, which aren't really available till later in the game, and even then you need to be paying enough attention to things to realize these are all available upgrades. There's also a whole stealth aspect to the game that has its merits. You do have to dedicate a good amount of skill points towards it, which kind of took me a while because I was juggling trying to find out what was worth upgrading all the other seemingly random powers available to Aikido. The stealth does help you quite a bit by getting rid of the strongest enemy of a group in one hit, and if you do it properly, turning what may have been a really long encounter versus you just like against a couple of starter enemies. There's also like this super cool like Assassin's Creed stealth hit, so you like can go from the top of a building and attack stealthily and it'll kill him, and then you're in like silent mode so you can aim at another one and kill two really quickly. But like I said, it took me forever to unlock, so I didn't really get to use it till the end of the game. Traversal is also a huge part of this world. There is fast travel through the Torii gates you've freed, but there's also a gliding mechanic, a fixed point grapple mechanic, and then later on there's like a choose anywhere to grapple power. These all cost skill points to unlock, of course, but once you have them, the entire game basically changes. You're not stuck in the small claustrophobic alleyways of Shibuya to get where you need to get. You can also go pretty much wherever you'd like to go, and it saves you a huge amount of time. There's also no fall damage, something you learn quite early on in the game, as one of the early missions ends on top of a shopping mall and you're basically guided to jump off. Removing, or not adding fall damage to the game is one of the few things that the developers gave back to the player instead of making them jump through hoops and collect arbitrary items to remove barriers. This is the kind of game where it wouldn't have been surprising at all to me that fall damage was a thing until you unlock the skill required to remove it. Speaking of arbitrary items, the main currency you're dealing with this game is Mika. If you're even kind of vacuuming the ghosts you see, shooting the money pots, the idol statues that are both full of money, completing side missions, seeing dogs, you'll be flush with it, and there's barely anything to spend it on. There's the Katashiro, which costs a few thousand each. These hold one group of spirits at a time, yet again arbitrarily creating barriers for your player. I ended up maxing out on these extremely early on, and it wasn't that expensive, just under 100 grand for all of them, I believe. Other than that, there's food, which costs nothing compared to how much you earn, and then there's talismans, which are expensive, but you don't really use them that often. And even then, I think the most expensive one is 6,000 or so Mika, when my average account balance was around 200,000 to 300,000 Mika at most times. Then there's also a couple shops that have 3 Magatamas, which are the second currency in the leveling up system. These were selling for 30,000, 70,000, and 130,000. And yes, I was able to purchase all 3 on my first visit to any of these without even really breaking a sweat. I had many memorable moments in my 25 hours with Ghostwire Tokyo. I'll of course keep them spoilers free as possible in case you're actually planning on giving the game a shot after this video. First off, the school mission. This was one of my favorites. Basically, these students heard of KK and his various accomplishments in the world of the paranormal, and they want to do something similar. So they set out to summon a spirit, and it backfires, ending most of their lives and seemingly possessing one of the students. This mission was a great addition to the game, as it came with that spiders thread update. It had a great bunch of scares and some very tense moments as well. This mission, other than some boss fights, which I won't spoil at all, makes it the best mission in the game. Next was like random side missions, actually. The stories some of these told make it worthwhile to play all of them just to find these. And they're really cool stories. They're all pretty much like slice of life stories, except for one or two that like got like a really big extra treatment, and I had a great time in most of them. The piano one really made an impact on me for its creativity and storytelling. Another really awesome thing Ghostwire Tokyo did was destroying or manipulating the environment as you exist in it. Like the ashtray level from Control, you exist in these spaces that break the rules of what a physical space can or should be. Doors will move all over the place while you're climbing up the sides of buildings. Walls are alive and moving, like things like that. These will result in fear, unease, and very puzzling areas. Once, specifically, I ended up redoing a couple of times because I didn't see the invisible bridge the game expected you to walk down. But yeah, like I said at the beginning of the video, Ghostwire Tokyo is definitely a game that has its flaws, but it's also a pretty great game. I was continuously amazed by the beauty of it all, and I was always excited to see what crazy turn it would take next. I'm glad I took the time to play through it, experience the story it had to tell, and get settled into the world Tango Gameworks created for us. I think it's worth a shot if you don't let the first couple of hours dissuade you. I am very much looking forward to the leaked sequel that may or may not exist, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching to the end.